The big debate over the weekend was whether progressive lawmakers in the House of Representatives should refuse to support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House unless she commit to bringing Medicare for All to the House floor for a vote. Now, as we all know, Nancy Pelosi has been nominated to serve as Speaker of the House again, but the official vote confirming that she'll be Speaker of the House in the next session hasn't happened yet. And so the idea here is to use that leverage against Nancy Pelosi and to pressure her to bring Medicare for All to the floor for a vote. Now, David Sirota has shared his thoughts on this, and I like what Sirota has to say because of all the different options, the nuances of shifting the power dynamic, which I think is an important part of the conversation. Now, to be sure, Sirota is in fact in favor of using that strategy that I just described, of the progressive members of the House withholding their support for Nancy Pelosi until she commit to that floor vote on Medicare for All. But he does also acknowledge that this would be a performative vote, writing only asking for that performative vote rather than asking for things that might change the structural power dynamic would be a waste, and yet another instance of progressives reverting to a feckless tradition of prioritizing spectacles rather than wielding of actual power. And to add to that, every person from every party seems to gravitate toward that spectacle. And I think that is a problem, right? I mean, when you see lawmakers on Twitter, for instance, say things about how, this needs to happen and that needs to happen. Okay, great, well, you're elected to be placed in a position of power to actually fight to make that happen. So get off Twitter and make it happen. But let me give you more of what Sirota has to say. If members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus were serious about championing Medicare for All and about using their momentary power in the speaker race as leverage, they could do much more than merely push for a ceremonial Medicare for All vote that might be helpfully clarifying, but also would very likely fail. So what does he mean when he says clarifying, but would likely fail? So there aren't enough members in the House who support Medicare for All to pass. And so the argument is, well, it's not just a performative vote, it just makes it abundantly clear which Democrats are actually in favor of Medicare for All and which Democrats are not. And so a lot of this pressure has been directed toward AOC, which we'll get to in just a second. But first, I want to give you some of the other options that were provided by Sirota. So for instance, House members can actually circumvent normal rules and committee procedures to force a floor vote on the issue. Sirota writes this: creating a discharge petition on Medicare for All would help clarify who actually supports the program and who is merely co-sponsoring Medicare for All legislation as a performative but empty gesture. Also, let me just note this, although I don't think it'll ever happen in a million years, Joe Biden as president can actually unilaterally have everyone covered with Medicare for All with a single payer healthcare system during a pandemic. It's actually due to the Affordable Care Act and how it's written. It essentially indicates that the president, again, can make sure that everyone has Medicare for All during a pandemic. Now, will Biden do that? I highly doubt it, especially since he's the type of person who will commit not once, but twice to vetoing a Medicare for All bill if it lands on his desk. They can also condition their vote on the removal, I think this is important, the removal of Representative Richard Neal, who chairs the House Ways and Means Committee. As we know, he is funded by the private healthcare industry. He's the Democratic lawmaker who has fought aggressively to defeat bills that would end surprise medical billing. So to shift power in the House Ways and Means Committee is incredibly important. And so who's second in line to take that role as chair of the committee? Well, it's actually a Democratic lawmaker who's much more progressive, Representative Lloyd Doggett, who again is the next in line and would be much more supportive of Medicare for All. So there's more, and I'll get to it in just a second, but the point here is Sirota is supportive of what is being proposed in withholding votes, but he is also making the argument that there are other paths to gaining something a little more substantive, which again is a shift of power within the House, Cenk?
Yeah, there's a really important wrinkle and clarity that I want to add to this. So if you vote against Pelosi, there's a couple of different ways to vote against her. One is to propose a Democratic alternative. Srota's in favor of that. What Jimmy Dore initially is proposing is just vote against her with the Republicans so that she's blocked. But that would likely make Kevin McCarthy the Speaker of the House. And so that's a much bolder line of action. And you could have any opinion you want about that boldness. So I'm gonna share my opinion in a second. I agree and disagree with both of them and a lot of people on this issue. I like them all, and it's perfectly normal for all of us to disagree slightly. So, and for everyone to make their case. So please, everybody act responsibly in thinking and knowing that not everyone you disagree with on every issue is a bad actor, okay? So on all sides. So first of all, I wanna give Jimmy credit because he's actually taking action here, which almost no one ever does. And I think it's actually constructive. So I would give him double credit for that. Now, where do I stand on this? And first of all, let me say that challenging votes that are considered automatic in Congress is definitely the right course of action. It's only a question of how and when on which votes can you have the maximum impact. And so I definitely am in favor of challenging votes, and I'll be in favor of that probably dozens of times going forward in the next 2 years alone. Okay, so now number two. Am I in favor of challenging Pelosi by another Democrat? Yeah, I've yelled and screamed 1,000 times. For God's sake, will anyone step up and challenge her from the left? The only challenges she has ever received in her whole life is from the right. So I think that the progressives in Congress not challenging her from the left is totally wrong strategy. In fact, I'm gonna read you one of our members, but I'm gonna disagree. Someone who likes AOC wrote in, I would suggest simply trusting our own people-funded politicians in matters of strategy. They know the costs and benefits 1,000 times better than people on Twitter and 1,000,000 times better than Jimmy Dore. All right, I hear you, but I hate to disappoint you, but no, I've talked to a lot of people in Washington. There's almost no strategy. I'm being honest with you. I think those progressives in Congress are wonderful. You guys help get them elected. They actually do have principles. They're great on policies. They're great on congressional hearings. Are they great on strategy? I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen one piece of strategy work against corporate Democrats. I haven't really even seen them fight corporate Democrats, to be honest. And I love them, but I'm being realistic with you that my job is to give you the news. So before I go further, Anna, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I did want to say something because I really want to unequivocally share what my views are on the actual issue at hand. I shared my personal views on how I feel about the specific messenger, but I don't want to get into details on that because I think that the actual issue does matter. I have absolutely no problem with pressuring our lawmakers. I have no problem pressuring members of the squad. They deserve more pressure, considering the fact that they're supposed to be the Democratic lawmakers who serve the best interests of the vast majority of Americans who actually want single-payer healthcare, or to improve wages, or to do a whole host of things that our congressional lawmakers have abandoned us on. And so if they use their leverage in the way that's been proposed by Jimmy Dore, I have no problem with that, right? I do think it's important to consider intentions, but whatever, we're not gonna talk about that in the context of this story. Now, I do also think that there are upsides and downsides to all of the strategies that have been proposed, right? And so let's say, worst case scenario, progressive lawmakers carry this out. There is a significant downside to it if there's a possibility that you have a Republican speaker, because how are you gonna get anything done with a Republican speaker? And then at the same time, imagine if we actually do manage to get 2 Democrats in the runoff race in Georgia elected, right? So then you're gonna needlessly create a roadblock to possibly passing legislation that we want. But that's just a risk that maybe people are willing to take. But if you're gonna hold lawmakers accountable, I'm not against that. If you're gonna pressure lawmakers, I'm not against that. I love what Sirota is specifically proposing here in regard to Richard Neal. Richard Neal should not be the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. He's definitely standing in the way. He's a giant obstacle when it comes to getting anything accomplished when it comes to healthcare in America.
Yeah, no. Look, I love the Richard Neal idea. You know me, I loathe Richie Neal, and because he's the worst, one of the most corrupt Democrats I've ever seen in my lifetime, and specifically on the issue of healthcare. And the executive authority suggestion he has are great. But wait a minute, let's be clear though. Let me criticize Sirota too. And again, I have nothing but respect for him, and he was a contributor here, and we have him on all the time. But number one, it's not performative to draw a line in the sand. It draws media attention, and media attention helps in framing and branding. Part of the reason why AOC is so successful is she's great at drawing media attention. That's not a bad thing. What has it done? It put Green New Deal on the map. It put a lot of policies that the mainstream media was not reporting on or considering on the map. So I think dismissing it as performative is not correct. And second of all,
hold that thought, because I want to respond to what you just said, Cenk. So, okay, that's fair enough. But one other thing to take into consideration, and this is probably what I'm most concerned about. So let's say, best case scenario, the strategy works, and then they hold this vote. And the prediction, and I think it's an accurate prediction, is that there aren't enough votes to pass Medicare for all. What does that mean? Look, we know how Nancy Pelosi fights progressives, right? She's a dove when it comes to Republicans, but when it comes to progressives, she fights hard. When it comes to fighting on behalf of her donors, she fights hard. And so I'm worried that if that vote fails, well, then she can use that as an excuse for not ever, holding another vote or ever wanting to pass Medicare for all in the future. Like, oh, look at that, they failed, no one wants it, let's move on. Are you in any way concerned about that?
Yeah, so let me be clear, because this gets to the end game, right? So number one, let's split it into two things. Let's talk about the immediate, then I want to answer your question because they're related. So Sirota says, I don't want to do it if it means Kevin McCarthy is Speaker of the House. I agree with him. The problem is, if we agree with that, well, since there is no one running from the left, that's your only choice. And so let's be realistic. You also can't make the Richie Neal ask. You can't make the executive authority ask. You can't make any of these asks unless you're willing to say, I'm gonna vote against you, even if it means Kevin McCarthy Speaker. So let's just make up our mind on how we wanna do this strategy. So look, so him proposing better asks is good and helpful and constructive, but saying that you could get to those asks in a non-performative way is not true. At the end of the day, you must vote no on something, right? So now in this case, this is all, unfortunately, I wish it was more impactful, but likely to be much ado about nothing, because right now it's in Congress, there's one Libertarian, 5 seats undecided, 196 Republicans and 233 Democrats. Even if all 10 Justice Democrats vote no, there could barely muster up another handful of progressives to vote with them. It's not enough to swing that vote. If you think, oh, the Progressive Caucus is huge. No, the Progressive Caucus is filled with posers. So it's filled with great people, but a lot of people who are also in the new Democrat coalition, Blue Dog Democrats. Those are totally conservative Democrats. They're just throwing their name into every caucus. The Progressive Caucus is no way going to vote against Pelosi and in favor of McCarthy. It's not gonna happen, okay? And in fact, there's a downside to that strategy, the original strategy proposed by Jimmy Dore, which is that the media, and I get it, we'll fight the media in other ways, etc. And I love that fight. But the media will say, aha, we knew it. The far left is the same as the far right, and they're now voting with some of the worst Republicans, right? So at the end of the day, what do I think? And we're gonna ask you guys, because we got a poll on this, because I think it's a really interesting and tough question. I would not hold the line on this vote. I do not want to risk Kevin McCarthy being Speaker. I don't think strategically it's the right framing on this particular issue. But if you say, okay, Cenk, then you're voting for to not hold the line ever. No, not at all true. I I'm happy to say no to the defense bill. Depending on the situation, I might vote yes on shutting the government down if we don't get some any kind of compromise ever to the left. So I'm willing to go very far on many different so-called must-pass bills, because especially with the defense bill, I don't give a damn if it passes. I know everybody in Washington cries over it, but if you're a progressive, you shouldn't be crying over, oh my God, did the defense contractors get enough, right? So there will be opportunities, and we should do every one of these strategies. We got to pick our spots, and helping the Republicans in this case, the potential for helping the Republicans, I don't think is the right way to go.
Yeah, and then there was one other thing I wanted to mention that I thought was a good idea by Sirota, where he argues, a vote on Medicare for all is one thing, but you could also schedule a vote to allow states to create their own single-payer healthcare, right? And that's
I don't agree with that either.
Oh, you don't agree with that? Okay.
Yeah, and
I think it is an interesting strategy, though. Let me just give some context so the audience knows what we're talking about. So Ro Khanna proposed legislation that would empower the Department of Health and Human Services to approve waivers to states that want to create their own single-payer healthcare system. And should that pass, keep in mind that Javier Becerra, who is supportive of Medicare for all, could be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. And so that's a good sign. That could pave the way for Medicare for all, at least on a state level. But I want to hear your thoughts real quick on that, Cenk.
Yeah, I just think that doing it at the state level is much harder. You need national infrastructure for this. So I don't want to go to a halfway measure that then fails because it wasn't for the whole country. And then, oh no, we set the movement back for no reason. Nationwide, it definitely works. It works in every developed country in the world. We're the only ones who don't have it. But am I positive that Vermont's gonna get it right or California's gonna get it right? I'm not positive. And so they might not be able to do it without the national budget behind it, honestly. So, and I don't want to go to weak sauce alternatives, in my opinion, okay? So I definitely want a Medicare for all vote on the floor of the House. It will be, so on that, I agree 1,000,000,000% with Jimmy and that side of the equation. Because you know who needs to know who's gonna vote against Medicare for all? I need to know, because I am gonna make a list and I will primary those people. Okay, I will help every organization that primaries those people. I'll help every PAC, every candidate that primaries those guys. And we need a list. They're lying. Hey, I'll give you a perfect, last two things is perfect example. And everybody go to tyt.com/polls because we really want to know your opinion on this, because it's a super interesting issue. And I don't know where you guys are gonna come out on it, okay? So now, the last two things that are important are, look, Tim Ryan ran for president. When he did, I caught up with him at the Iowa stakeout, okay, like where they cook steaks, one of those cutesy American traditions. And he's a co-sponsor of Medicare for all. And I said, so if you win, will you do Medicare for all? He said, absolutely not. What? And then I asked him, if there's a vote on Medicare for all, will you vote for Medicare for all? If the winner asks you to, okay? And so here's the poll, by the way. Should progressives in Congress withhold their votes for Pelosi unless you promise a Medicare for all floor vote? So check that out, tyt.com/polls/M4A, but you can just do polls and it'll get you there. Okay, so Tim said, Congressman Ryan said, no, he wouldn't even vote for it, even if the Democratic president asked him to. So the people who co-sign on to Medicare for all, half of them are lying. They're not telling the truth at all. So then I wanna know who's lying and who's not. Are you gonna represent your voters or you're not? And then secondly, that's why I'm so excited about the possibility of Nina Turner running for Congress. I mean, she's already filed. There's already a page, ninaturner.com/hello. That's to raise money for her. It looks like she's definitely running. So if she's got a campaign page for donations, go for it, okay? And so why do I care about that? Because in a moment where somebody says, hey, somebody should run against Nancy Pelosi, who's a Democrat, and not just Kevin McCarthy. Right now, I love them, but they're all like, oh no, everybody in Washington would be really mad at us. You're not gonna tell Nina Turner that. Nina Turner's gonna do something like that in a second. They're gonna say, hey, Nina, people are gonna be mad at you if you run against Nancy Pelosi from the left. She'll be like, duly noted. Hello, somebody, I'm running. Okay, so NinaTurner.com/hello. Put her in Congress. We'll get a lot of these floor votes.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.